redemption for the Sussex Survivors Club. Somebody at page 6 got some bad intel, I think, because 2025 doesn't exactly look like the year of the Markle Sparkle so far. Let's recap some of the fallout from Vanity Fair's latest piece on the Duke and Duchess of Chaos. While there were certain bits of the Vanity Fair article that, of course, I was obsessed with, I did not, and maybe that's good. Maybe it's good that they look balanced and that they're being open-minded about all parties involved. But to go after Catherine in the Early Years project felt like low-hanging fruit. It felt irrelevant and it felt untrue. So that was one of my takeaways. Also, I noticed that after the article came out, when I'm distributing it with other royal commentators and other people in the business, I noticed this like days later. My takeaway should have been, I understand this now because I went back and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you this. I forgot to tell them that Meghan was shopping a book. According to Vanity Fair, there was a rumor circulating that Meghan potentially was shopping a book post-divorce. She's not getting a divorce, they said, but what kind of money could she get if she were to write a book post-divorce from Prince Harry, according to Vanity Fair? That is what the biggest takeaway should have been, right? Well, I noticed that in my text messages and WhatsApp messages to my friends, I was like, Beyonce rejected Markle. Beyonce did not want to do the Archetypes podcast. How silly that is what Megan Thee Stallion did not want to do the Archetypes podcast. It was Beyonce, but still Megan Thee Stallion's name was also featured in the Vanity Fair article. Another interesting point they made was that Archetypes was not Meghan's concept, they claim. They claim that it was another former Spotify or Archwell Audio employee that originally created the concept. They don't own any of the rights or anything, but they said that this person came up with the idea that Harry and Meghan were just so bad at ideas. That I really, truly believe. And I don't know if you remember this, but around the time that Archwell was kind of wrapping up, and Meghan was receiving some awards, like I think she received a People's Choice Award, she received the Gracie Award. There were rumblings of how difficult it was to get everything off the ground and how she was challenging to work with, how many resources she was taking up. And every once in a while on social media, like on TikTok or on LinkedIn, you would see somebody that worked on this podcast make catty little remarks like, it takes a village, or, things like that. There were social media comments that alluded to the fact that there was some resentment there and that there were people that were unhappy that were involved in that podcast. So I do believe, and specifically the reason why I say that is there was one person where it felt like she was complaining that somebody was taking credit for something she did. And that is what I immediately thought about when I read that part of the article. Now, I mean, I'd say the very first headlines to hit that were built out of this article were, of course, these other bullying allegations, the concept of the mean girl. Let's see if I can quickly access some of my notes on that. I loved that they used the word mean girl. Oh, and then wait, really quickly, I will say everyone who spoke to Vanity Fair said Meghan and Harry are deeply in love. As one person put it, they are so hot for each other. Like, how you meet those couples where you're like, the way they're looking at each other, I should probably not be here right now. It was confusing for the author to contribute that and then also contribute the idea that Meghan would be shopping a post-divorce book. I am surprised, truly, that legal allowed them to include that part in the story because she is saying, like, these are just rumors. And Vanity Fair kind of feels like a publication that is above just rumors, which makes me wonder how good her sources. I know. I mean, I'm leaning towards her having great sources, being able to include that in this piece. But it did feel silly to include both of those facts. They're all over each other. They're lusting after each other. But the divorce book is in the works. It just that is going to people will question the divorce book concept when the same article mentions how close the two seem, how they are deeply in love, right? I don't know if you agree with me on that. Then we have a person inside the Sussex's couple circle says Harry is very personable in private. And then in public, he's so protective of her because people are so nasty to her. It's a whole different experience. We talked about that already. Bully allegations resurface. Meghan Markle was described as acting like a mean girl teenager and becoming cold and throwing staff to the wolves when something went poorly, often due to her own demands. I feel like we heard very similar stories there in Valentine Lowe's book Courtiers, as well as Tom Bower's Revenge. Harry and Meghan make these crappy decisions, and then when things don't go their way, they lash out at people, when in reality, they should really, the Hollywood Reporter article. I mean, the Hollywood Reporter article said the same thing. And if they hated the Hollywood Reporter article, hide your kids, hide your wife, because this Vanity Fair piece put the Hollywood Reporter article to shame, right? Staff allegedly needed therapy after working with Meghan. That is the line that everybody loves. Prince Harry and Meghan's neighbors slammed the pair as the most entitled, disingenuous people on the planet. It's reported that the couple became local villains, according to several people the magazine spoke to. Vanity Fair cites a source who claims that the idea for the Sussex's Archetypes podcast came from another employee. Oh, and we talked about that already, but Harry turning down the podcast idea where he reviews Coco. I mean, what's worse? Harry reviewing Coco or talking to the Pope? These are all bad ideas. I mean, really, like, you are setting the bar that low. Harry reviewing Coco? Get out. GTFO. And I guess the idea stemmed from, who does this? Him showing up at the office one day, at Spotify's office. And when they ask if you want water when you sit down, would you like some water? Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a coffee? He wanted cocoa because he's a grown ass. This 40-year-old man wanted chocolate milk. And somebody had to leave the building to collect some for him. I mean, I don't have it written down because I really didn't think it was that relevant, but the article also says that Meghan Markle is basically his mother. She babies him and she takes care of everything for him. And it's like, hashtag duh. We knew that. A person who knows the couple said they believe that Harry would be happy for Meghan to make all the money and he concentrate on charity work. Despite the major opportunities offered to the Sussexes upon their arrival in California in the shape of Netflix and Spotify deals, they failed to yield consistent, successful content. And that is what I would say when reading that weird sentence about Meghan Markle's evolution compared to Catherine's. They failed to yield consistent, successful content. So we have had a friend close to Harry and Meghan speak out. This is according to the Daily Beast, a friend who remains in contact with both Prince William and Harry, noted that Meghan's new cooking show has been ridiculed and postponed, and that Harry has a grueling court case coming up. They said that things aren't easy for them right now. Vanity Fair have succeeded in making a bad time worse. Well, I shouldn't have laughed right there. That was rude. I'm sorry, I take it back. I think I meant that as a punctuation, not like a gloat. I meant it as a punctuation. So that is one reaction from a friend. And I have another one that I thought was really interesting. Camilla Tomney, she, according to a new claim by one of the first journalists to report Meghan Markle bullying allegations, Camilla, she is the senior editor at the Daily Telegraph, but at the time she was a royal reporter, royal correspondent. Meghan Markle used a whisper shout to aggressively berate employees so that Harry wouldn't realize what was going on. And this story is in response to the Vanity Fair story. So Camilla's coming out saying, well, wait. I have additional details. Over the weekend, she posted a message on X saying that her reporting had been vindicated by the Vanity Fair investigation, which claims that Meghan's treatment of staff has been so poor since relocating to America that at least one ended up in long-term therapy. The former royal correspondent first reported that Meghan and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, argued. This was around Meghan's wedding, causing Catherine to cry over a bridesmaid dress fitting for Princess Charlotte. Citing multiple sources, Camilla agreed with a line in the Vanity Fair piece in which a former staffer said, "You can be yelled at even if somebody doesn't raise their voice." In fact, she said a former employee had told her Meghan has a habit of using a whisper shout. So when Harry is in the room, he just hears her talking normally and doesn't understand why people describe her as aggressive. The source continued, his default response is always, Meghan is misunderstood. They explained that Meghan threw around phrases like lack of accountability, hot meat kettle, disappointment, or we know what you did, and yet we still decided to support you. But when staff tried to clarify, asking what exactly they'd done wrong, she dismissed them with lines like, I think it's best we keep it to ourselves and not advertise it in front of the team. We're here to protect you, not throw you under the bus. LOL. Camilla warns that other people's truth may finally be catching up with Meghan. I think that's kind of a joke because Meghan's always talking about her truth. The Vanity Fair article says that one person took a leave of absence after working on 3 episodes of Meghan's podcast, and adds that several others described taking extended breaks from work to escape scrutiny, exiting their job, or undergoing long-term therapy after working with Meghan. Meanwhile, former employees, we know them lovingly as the Sussex Survivors Club, who told the Daily Beast in September that Meghan was a boss who had psycho moments and could be a demon, have told the Beast that they also feel vindicated by the astonishing claims in Vanity Fair. One source told the publication in September, I always thought she was a classic narcissist, and getting her staff to tell a magazine how amazing she is only confirms that in my mind. She is lovely when it is all going her way, but a demon when the worm turns. First of all, hands up if you think that Meghan will give an exclusive to the National Enquirer next week with all of the glowing, testimonials she can get this time, now that Us Weekly has already done some dirty work for her. The Vanity Fair profile makes a similar claim, with one ex-employee saying that Meghan's relationships with staff tend to be warm and effusive until something goes wrong, at which stage Meghan will become cold and withholding. The Daily Beast touched base over the weekend with the same people that called her a demon and talked about her psycho moments. One said, I feel desperately sorry for the people affected because I have been there, but I also feel vindicated. All those people saying she is the world's greatest boss should be ashamed of themselves. It's obviously very tempting to work for her when you are being wooed and love bombed, but people should be in no doubt. She is a nightmare. I would think the atmosphere will be particularly hellish now. Everything is going to SHIT. She doesn't do disappointment well. So we're hearing the same theme here, that some dishes might have been broken in Montecito over the weekend. Just basically what I'm taking away from those reactions. Is there any piece that stood out to you? I've said this a couple of times already, but when I walked away from it, I was embarrassed to be like, the biggest takeaway for me was that Beyonce potentially declined the podcast. There are so many bigger stories within that piece, but to me, it was like, oh, Beyonce didn't want to do a podcast. What stood out
Mm.
to you?
Well, I think it's clearly been very well researched. The journalist in question has obviously spent a lot of time speaking to numerous sources, some who have gone on record, the majority, as you might expect, have not. I mean, I think it's pretty damning for Harry and Meghan. I mean, when you consider that Vanity Fair was the magazine that sort of launched Meghan as Harry's new girlfriend, that wild about Harry front page cover story that was, so positive for her. For 5 years on, at a point where you might expect the couple to be the toast of Tinseltown, to be producing brilliant content with this multi-million-dollar deal. In fact, one of the things they say in Vanity Fair is that it's not the $100 million deal, which is the figure put out there. But rest assured, it's a big multi-million-dollar deal they've got. You would expect, I think, them to be having much more of an impact, creating award-winning content, really having Archwell and their philanthropic platform exploding on a global level. And I think the feeling is that they just haven't lived up to expectations. And coming from Vanity Fair, which is, I think, always very fair. I mean, I would say that, and listen, I just full disclosure, I work for Vanity Fair. I'm their royal correspondent, but it is always top quality journalism. It's impartial, it's balanced, it's well researched. For the Sussexes to come out of a piece like this, the way they have, I think, well, they must be, well, I would imagine deeply, deeply disappointed, because they've already had the Hollywood Reporters sort of turn on them. There are many other publications that have sort of been less than flattering, I think, about their foray into Hollywood. As I say, this is a look 5 years on, and you know there seems to be more of what we've heard rumors of before that seem to be more substantiated in this piece, and that members of staff or people that worked with Meghan sort of needed therapy afterwards because it was such a traumatic experience working with her. Of course, that sort of fuels again all of those stories about the allegations of bullying, which you'll remember came out of the palace. And it feels like very little has changed in terms of that respect. And there's been quite limited progress. I mean, when I sort of sit and reflect on it, that's how I come away from the article feeling. And so I'm sure they must feel pretty disheartened and deeply disappointed with the piece, and probably not very happy.
Can I ask you what the process is for writing a piece like this, if there are people that aren't familiar with the
Yeah.
type of
Well, I
journalism?
mean, look, listen, as I said, I've not written this piece. I've not had anything to do with this piece, but I can tell you that the research that goes into these pieces, I mean, these are big essays. This isn't just something that's sort of fired off in a matter of days. This will have been months of really getting into their circle, speaking to people who they've worked with, um, really interviewing people, getting the trust of those people to speak off the record. The research is forensic. The legal checking is unlike anything you've ever experienced. I mean, everything has to be attributed. I mean, it's the brilliant magazine that it is for a reason. It's quality journalism. Radhika Jones is a brilliant editor. She's got her finger on the pulse for everything that America seems to be talking about. And this is a brilliant, albeit, for the Sussexes, pretty damning cover story. And of course it's got the world talking, because it's Vanity Fair, and it's the one place where I think Harry and Meghan would actually be wanting to seek the seal of approval. But in terms of what goes into a cover story like this, months and months of work, researching, um, legal checking, fact checking. I've worked for many publications, but at Vanity Fair, it's on an exceptional level. It's to the very, very highest standard.
Yeah, I just did a murder documentary for HBO, and I could not believe the amount of fact checking that, I did it, I sat there, recorded it, walked away, forgot about it, and then legal came back. And, I had to provide all of the documents, all of the research that I had, all of my sources.
Yeah.
So I imagine that Vanity Fair is similar, if not higher in their expectations when it comes to that. I don't remember if there was the classic line at the bottom that you sometimes see in papers that the Sussexes were approached for comment. I don't remember if that was included,
It
but
was included that they
yeah.
were approached and declined to be interviewed for the piece.
So is it your opinion that that was a mistake? Could sitting down with them, could that have changed the tone? Or do you think that they were better off to distance themselves from this as much as
Well,
they?
I think unless they were going to grant the magazine a proper sit down, I think probably they were wise to not respond because there was so much in the piece that I think it would have been difficult for them to address every concern. And I think, this is a couple who like to have control of the narrative. And this is very obviously a story where they were not going to have control. This was never going to be a sort of sit down with Harry and Meghan. And I think their strategy is probably by not getting involved, by not commenting, they put less heat into the story. And, eventually, after a few days, people will stop talking about it. But I think the impact of this cover story will continue days after publication because it's, as I say, it feels like very much a milestone here. 5 years since they moved to America, and that sort of sense of slight disappointment in terms of what they've achieved. Of course, some of it's been beyond their control. We were expecting Meghan's cookery show to come up, but because of the fires in LA, and I think rightfully so, she and Netflix made the decision to suspend that for a while. I think it's probably the right thing to do. But there does seem to be a pattern to these hiccups, to things perhaps starting and then being halted. I'm thinking of
American
the
Riviera Orchard, but
yeah.
also Harry and
Yeah,
Meghan's
I'm thinking
reality
of
show. Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking of American Riviera Orchard and the fact that, that's all ready to go, and then suddenly there's an issue over the patent and the naming of it. They do seem to have these setbacks, and I think the media can be quite unforgiving of them. And it seems to be one after the other. They always seem to hit a stumbling block.
It's interesting though, because I agree that this has like the reverberations of something that's not just going to die quietly. Because the in December of last year, a source close to the Sussexes, who I do see work with Page Six quite a bit, they do get a lot of great scoops. They, leaked or shared some story about how 2025 was going to be all about the Markle sparkle. And that, everybody was talking about the Markle sparkle. Here it comes in 2025. And then this story comes and it just kind of feels like it's doused,
It's
whatever
a dampener on
buzz.
it. That it is.
Yeah.
It's a dampener, isn't it? It's yes. And I suspect, Kinsey, for Harry and Meghan, it must be really tough. They're trying to get things off the ground. They just don't seem to have enough cheerleaders in a town where supporters are really important.
Do you feel like the tide is turning for Harry and Meghan? Does this Vanity Fair article have some weight that they can't just dismiss in the way that you and I have discussed previously?
Absolutely. I think this is the end of the line for the image that Meghan has been desperately trying to promote. That is that she's a lovely person. Oh, I must go and help the victims of the Los Angeles fire. Well, if you really want to be thought of as a nice person, Meghan, start behaving properly. Start behaving well to your staff. Start treating people with respect. What we're getting more and more is this image that she wants to portray in public and the truth about her when she's not in public. Now, Vanity Fair, a lot of people say astonishing revelations. Well, I thought it was a fantastic read. It's an 8,000-word article. That is huge. That's almost as long as a novel. It is forensically researched. Vanity Fair is a very respectable publication. They cannot just turn around and say, this isn't true, this is just people with an axe to grind, people with an angle who are against us. No, they can't say that. In fact, their only unofficial response to this fantastic article in Vanity Fair is it's distressing. Well, that's not a denial, is it? Now, everything that Vanity Fair is saying really is just an expansion on what just 2 or 3 months ago the Hollywood Reporter said about her, that she was a tyrant in high heels, that she had tantrums at 5 in the morning, that she reduced grown men on her staff to tears. Now, Vanity Fair has taken that theme and run with it, and they've even managed to up the ante that people who worked with her were so traumatized by the way she treated her that they had to go into therapy. They can't deny this anymore. And let's talk about Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair is the nearest thing the magazine world in America gets to the Bible. To say it's taken seriously is the understatement of the century. Vanity Fair has an impeccable position in American culture. It is the magazine of the United States of America. To be disrespected in that, to be written off as American hustlers by Vanity Fair, trust me, Kinsey, you know this, that's the end of the line. There's no coming back from this. And how many times must this woman be accused of bullying before people like you and I can turn around and say, that's enough accusation, she is a bully. Now, she was accused of being a bully back in Britain when they were still working royals. She bullied front staff at Buckingham Palace, in all the palaces, by all accounts. Memos were written to the Queen to alert her to what was going on. She made Kate, cry in a row over the bridesmaids' dresses. Then they come to America, where she's accused of being a bully to her staff there. That is enshrined by the Hollywood Reporter, another very respected publication. We're not talking about sensationalist tabloids here. We're talking about proper journalistic publications that do their work, that do the research. The Hollywood Reporter spoke to 12 people who have worked for Meghan, one of whom still was working for her. Now the Vanity Fair has spoken to many more people who've been around her, who've worked for her. And one person who said that anyone who says Meghan is a delight to work for should be ashamed of themselves. She is a nightmare. She is a nightmare. I mean, I think we can say, unless she's going to come out and explain exactly why she is not a bully, Meghan Markle is a bully. And it is as simple as that. And that is why her name is poison in Hollywood, why she is toxic, and Harry and Meghan will never make it in Tinseltown. 2025 is going to be an interesting year for those two.
Yeah, no Markle Sparkle. I had Fox News ask me yesterday, why do these bully claims seem to haunt Meghan? And I said, I think the bully allegations continue to haunt Meghan because they are likely true, and Meghan's behavior is not changing for the better. I don't think it's that difficult of a question. Let's talk about Vanity Fair. The source that spoke to Prince Harry, they talked about how Prince Harry hadn't absorbed the gravity of what it would mean to sell millions of copies of a tell-all book about a famously guarded family in the middle of a years-long public relations crisis, which Prince Harry kind of kicked gasoline on. The insider said, the power of the written word and the power of the narrative, I don't know if that's something he understood while he was doing it. You know, there also was this exchange that they mentioned, Prince Harry at a party saying, when somebody asked him, had he heard from his family, that person saying, or Harry saying to that person, I hope I do. Kevin, he can't be this stupid. He can't be this dumb.
I think he can. I really think he can. I mean, as you know, Kinsey, he's not renowned for his intellectual prowess. You know, this is a guy who struggled to get to A levels. These are the higher exams you get here in Britain. He had to go to special cramming classes to get them in order to get into Sandhurst Military College to qualify as an officer. I mean, he's just not a very clever guy, and he's lived in a very cosseted world, cut off from the rest of reality. And I think that when he sat down to be interviewed for the book Spare, you know, in a naive way, he thought, well, I have to tell this guy everything I know. You know, he has no register, he has no sort of inner censor. So he just let it spew out. I mean, the stuff he was telling the author, I mean, or the ghostwriter, I mean, did we really need to know? Did we ever really need to know that he had frostbite of his genitals?
Willie?
I mean, what on earth did he think he was saying? Nobody needed to know that. The stuff he revealed for that book was shocking in its detail, made for a very good read. But I don't think he understood what he was doing. In fact, what he did with Spare was he opened a Pandora's box on thousands of years, generations of royal secrecy. The royals always kept up their mystique, quite rightly. They don't give interviews to tabloids or to magazines, glossy magazines, about the row they just had with their wife or the trouble they're having with their kids, or they can't afford the bills, or, you know, they don't do that because that's the mystique of royalty. Harry didn't understand that. That nuance passed him by, and therefore he vomited it all out into a book that, as I say, was one hell of a read. But you know, you remember that. I remember reading it and going, my God, what on earth is he saying here? So no, I think it's absolutely true that when Harry gave that tell-all interview to the ghostwriter, listing everything that ever happened, I mean, obviously slanted it in his favour, that he knew not what he did. He did not know what he was doing.
Did you have an issue with the idea that the writer talks about everyone saying that Harry and Meghan are deeply in love, they are so hot for each other, you feel like you shouldn't be in the room, but there's also the idea of Meghan shopping around a book about post-divorce. I justify it in my head that couples go through highs and lows, and perhaps this conversation happened during a low. Also, Meghan has had a divorce before. The concept is not as scary to her as it would be for Prince Harry. But I am seeing people that are associated with the Sussexes push back and say it doesn't make sense to include both of those things in the piece.
No, in terms of the love affair, you know, they're really hot for each other. I mean, maybe physically they are, I don't know. But I think this is a two-sided relationship. I mean, you know, I'm sure Meghan's got affection for Harry and all that. Harry, meanwhile, I mean, I think that essentially Meghan is like a mother substitute to him. People have said that she is reparenting him, that he goes around still going on about the trauma of his childhood. And he's looking for a mother figure, and that is what Meghan is. So he is absolutely enthralled to her. I think her attitude is different. I think he can't even contemplate the idea of them splitting up, of her leaving. I think she probably calculates it all the time, probably thinks about it. Now, when this story in the Vanity Fair magazine, in the 8,000 word article, when that is relayed, that somehow someone somewhere connected to Meghan asked around the publishing world about a potential post-divorce book written by Meghan, I think that, look, it was framed that she wondered whether publishers might be interested in that book. She knew full well they'll be very interested. Any publishing house, you know, would rip her arm off for that. Now, what I think the conversation was, though, it wasn't, would you be interested in a book of this nature, my post-divorce book? It was, how much would it be worth That was what the conversation was, if these conversations happened. Meghan and Meghan's people are denying it. But again, it's Vanity Fair. They wouldn't just put that in just for a bit of titillation. They really wouldn't. They're not that kind of publication. I suspect that allegation has gone in watered down from what it really was. And I suspect that the conversations that were being had, would you be interested in that book? There wasn't would you be interested in the book. She knows that. It's how much would this book be worth? That was what the conversation was, if you ask me.
They're saying over here in the States that the reason this piece is so damaging is because it's from an American in New York City that doesn't have an agenda, and it crushes Harry and Meghan's claims that it's a smear campaign brought on by the British tabloids that have an agenda. Do you think that's true?
Definitely. And I think that Harry has left one gilded cage, which was Buckingham Palace, and he's entered another, which is Montecito, California, in the mansion that has about 16 bathrooms. And so he's gone from being, a prisoner of the monarchy to a prisoner of Meghan Markle. It's quite clear to me. The Vanity Fair article, which I've got to say is the most explosive piece of royal journalism I've seen in a long time. It's a cracking read and longer than War and Peace, but more entertaining. And it's so interesting when they talked about how in love they are with each other. And it's almost like, get a room, guys.
Yeah.
But I mean, that turns my stomach, because I just think this is a guy in Harry like I said, he's under her spell, and I think she's got into his head. Harry's a damaged person, and manipulative people like Meghan will always look for a damaged soul that they can occupy as the host cell. Because look, what's Meghan all about? She's about control, isn't it? Fame, money, control, power, and it's all about her. And I think if you see how things are panning out, it's come to pass. I mean, she's an unstoppable force. $1 million question I've got for you, Kinsey, as the royal expert, is does she even need Harry anymore?
Does she need Harry anymore? I don't think she does need Harry anymore. And I think that's why you're seeing them deviate from the plan. Now they're going on solo engagements. And I don't know if you saw Prince Harry went to visit with firefighters here alone, and that surprised me. And instinctually, I felt guilty because I was less hostile about that than I was about Harry and Meghan showing up together to the Pasadena fires. But at the same time, when they showed up together, according to people that were there, they cleared out hundreds of volunteers so that Harry and Meghan could have their own little solo moment and private tour with the Pasadena mayor. And that's disruptive to healing. That's disruptive to peace and recovery. I mean, legitimate recovery. Harry stopping by a fire station and saying hi to some dogs is less disruptive. And I certainly wasn't as annoyed by that as I was about their visit to Pasadena. When it comes to the bullying allegations, I don't know if you remember the Hollywood Reporter article that kind of rocked them, but it was this big. You talk about War and Peace, how big this Vanity, and it, just really forensically researched this Vanity Fair article is. There was a Hollywood Reporter mention that was super small. It was just like a paragraph long, but it infuriated the Sussexes so much that within a week or two, they gave an exclusive to Us Weekly magazine, which is like a grocery store tabloid here in the States, where Meghan had some of her current employees praised her, saying, oh, she gives me her old baby clothes. She never lets me leave her house without fresh eggs and lemons. I mean, it was one woman said that Harry and Meghan watered her. She felt like a seed and Harry and Meghan watered her. I mean, it was very bizarre, like hippie Meghan Markle kind of trash, whatever. That did not work. That Us Weekly thing, for Vanity Fair to come out and do this, that was not a solution. So I was trying to think, what is the solution? How does Meghan change this narrative that she's a bully? And it occurred to me, and tell me if I'm being too cynical, it occurred to me that she uses the anti-bullying digital platform to try to divert attention off the fact that she is potentially the bully. So she goes on TV talking about how they're fighting bullying online. And the reality is, I think she's just trying to distract from the fact that she is known as a heinous bully.
Was it saying the quiet bit out loud? It's projection. It's that idea that they are the thing of which they accuse you. It's exactly the same reason why people on social media who call themselves Be Kind are the most vicious of all of the online trolls. So I think that's right. I think it's a very, very clever distraction, and I think it's working. You know, she's a very manipulative and clever person. And as I've said earlier, you know, I can't condone that, but she's good at it. And Harry's a fool for having got taken in, you know, and I do think he's been tricked, he's been hoodwinked. I don't know whether he realizes that yet, but there will come a moment when he wakes up one morning and realizes what he has sacrificed for this woman, and the spell will be broken. By which time I fear for this young man, it will be too late.
Is he that oblivious, or is he comfortable? Because one person that knows the couple said
Mm,
they believed that Harry would be happy for Meghan to make all the money and he concentrate on charity work. He's found somebody that's willing to hustle, that wants to put herself out there, that
yeah.
is obsessed with generating an income, even if she's running over your family to do so. Is he that oblivious? Or is he just comfortable being the stay-at-home dad that plays polo, surfs, and occasionally shows up to shake hands and kiss babies?
Well, that's the problem. You know Harry so well. You've been observing him for years, and he is a shadow of his former self. And he does look like someone that's just being kept in a box, that he's behaving himself. His body language when they're out together is very subservient to her, and he looks like the junior partner. You know, the article was interesting as well about her sort of her portraying herself as a victim, you know, that this idea from the article in Vanity Fair that Harry feels very protective of Meghan. But why does he feel protective of this multi-millionaire, world-famous actress that's married to a prince that lives in a gigantic mansion? What exactly is there to protect? And I think it's because she's doing a very good job of portraying herself to the world and to her husband as a victim, poor me. And anyone that's ever been in a slightly abusive relationship, Kinsey, will tell you that playing the victim card is another power flex.
What you're referencing is this line: he's so protective of her because people are so nasty to her. That stood out to me as, you know, people don't like you.
Mm,
Why aren't you deviating from the plan more? Like, why aren't you? It just feels like it's the same old, same old. I just feel like there's a lack of creativity when it comes to the branding of this couple. And I guess that would be
yeah.
my next question for you, because um, I think the theme of the article at the end of the day is 5 years. You've accomplished very little. You have
Mm,
very little discipline. You are unable to collaborate with people, and you have more losses than wins at the end,
yeah.
as we hit the 5 year mark. What have you felt about the Sussexes professionally after
Yeah.
Megxit?
Well, that's a great, great question. Essentially, the only profitable part of their business model has been the royal stuff, has been Harry's connection to the royal family as William's brother. And so it's really the book and the Netflix series which have been the money spinners. To be fair to Harry, Spare has been an international bestseller, so it was very well marketed.
Someone else wrote it,
Many
though. Someone else wrote it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that probably helps. That's why it's readable. But so the book was a hit and the Netflix series was a hit. Why? Well, because that was their meal ticket. Harry's royal connections, his story. Above and beyond that, there's not much there. The rest is very much slim pickings. What have you got? I mean, do you remember the raft of ideas that were pitched to Spotify and Netflix, which an insider, I think, at Spotify said were so embarrassing. They were like, they couldn't barely stop laughing at some of his suggestions for TV show ideas, because I don't really unkind about Harry. I think he's a good guy, but he's not brain of Britain, is he? He's no great intellect, I would say. I mean, the other big problem for
Wait, but
Harry,
I want to I want to
mm,
challenge you right now. If you
go on
were
then.
Prince Harry, what would you pitch to Spotify or Netflix that involved you?
Mm,
Like, because you and I both know that when Netflix
mm,
offered them a deal, what they wanted was Harry and Meghan. They wanted
yeah,
Kardashian style. So understanding, which Harry and Meghan clearly didn't, but understanding those were the expectations. If you were Prince Harry, because you are incredibly creative, off the top of your head, can you think of anything that you would have pitched them? Because I would have done like sit downs with veterans that had incredible stories and to promote Invictus games throughout the year.
Well, I think that's a great idea because that's connected to his brand and that's what he cares about. And the Invictus Games is one of the positives for Harry in his life. I think that he's a world famous man. He's a figure of, he's got a global footprint. He's the king's son. So I probably would encourage him to do a documentary series in which he travels the world meeting people from all walks of life, because I think it'd be fascinating for someone that rich and that famous and that privileged to meet ordinary people. So I think a Louis Theroux style world tour, going to different countries, learning about cultures, I think that would be great because he's quite watchable. He's a decent looking guy. People tend to warm to Harry as well. When people meet Harry, they do like him. I don't think he's going to be the next David Letterman or Jimmy Kimmel. He's not really a broadcaster as such. But that's what I do. But in the end, if I had to be creative and come up with ideas for Harry, I would struggle because his great asset was his life story. He sold that and there really isn't much beyond. And the other issue, what's really scary for Harry now is that in a sense, there's no way out because the British people have completely fallen out of love with him. I mean, many say he's not welcome back in this country. And Meghan would certainly get booed if she returned. William is absolutely incandescent with rage towards his brother, and they're certainly not on speaking terms. And I think the hatred is palpable. But then there's William and Harry and his own father, which is frosty at best now because of what Harry's put the family through. So the family's gone, the country's gone. His public role can't come back because he's not a royal anymore. So what exactly would he return to if he came back to Britain? So the real headache for him is that he's trapped. He's all in, okay? It's like he's in the casino and he put all his chips on one Meghan Markle. And that's why he's now hostage to fortune.
If you agree with us, disagree with us, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks, everyone. Bye.